We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the August 9th, 2024 Workforce Development Committee meeting. My name is Wendy Strack, Chair of the committee. And before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. Committee members will be participating remotely from private, non-public sites. The public may participate in person or remotely, or by attending in person at DCA headquarters at 1625 North Market Boulevard, Suite N220. I will announce when we're accepting public comment on the various issues, and the meeting moderator will open the lines as appropriate. Each commenter will have 2 minutes to comment. Moderator, would you please provide the audience instructions on how they may participate during the meeting at the appropriate times?
Absolutely. When the time comes for public comment, we will be displaying instructions on the screen. For those who wish to make a comment, we ask that you raise your hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users will dial *3 to raise a hand. And for our mobile device users, you have 3 different screens and only one of them has a hand button. So you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... at the bottom, in order to find that hand. People will be given 2 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 15-second warning before your time expires. Madam Chair?
Thank you. I'd like to now call the meeting to order and ask Christina to call the roll call to establish a quorum.
Good morning.
Good
Wendy
morning.
Strack,
Present public member.
Eleanor Uribe,
Present LCSW member.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Good morning, present public board member.
and for the record, Justin Huft is absent today. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Christina. Board staff, would you like to introduce yourselves as well?
Yes. And before we begin, I just want to make a clarification. I apologize, Wendy. I had put South, I think I forget what I put on there for the unit number, but it is South 102, 1625 North Market is where we actually are meeting. It's in the big hearing room at DCA. So I apologize for that. Just a correction. So I think we're going to introduce, I'd like to, first of all, actually introduce a new member you'll be seeing up here from now on, Sarita Riso. She's right over here. She's going to be working closely with Roseanne, and we'll be looking at helping us out with research and looking at data and getting us some more information so we can make those sound policy decisions. So welcome, Sarita. And then I'm Steve Sodergren. I'm the Executive Officer of the Board of Behavioral Sciences.
Roseanne Helms, Legislative Manager for the board.
Marlon McManus, Assistant Executive Officer for the board.
Christy Berger, Regulatory Manager for the board.
And Sarita Risso, Special Projects and Research Analyst.
Sabina Knight, Legal Counsel for the board.
And that's it.
That gets everybody? All right.
Yep. Thank you.
And now we have an opportunity for the public to introduce themselves if you'd like. This is voluntary. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to introduce themselves?
Yes, we have some people.
Hi, good morning. Ben Caldwell, LMFT with High Pass Education.
Good morning, Elise Springer, LMFT with California Postpartum Support International.
Good morning, Shanti Ezrin with CAMPS in the room today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christine Tippett. I'm with Wiser, Wellness Together, and the CCFD, which is the Center for Child and Family Development. Nice to see you again.
And that is it for the attendees in the room here.
Okay. Moderator, would you please open up the opportunity for our online participants to introduce themselves?
Absolutely. We have a couple hands up already. And for those who don't have their hands up, now is a good time to put them up if you wish to introduce yourself. First, we're going to be calling on Jasmine Smith. Hold on. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm representing the California chapter of the NASW.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Selena. Hold on just a moment.
Selena Lou Raphael, California Alliance of Child and Family Services, Senior Behavioral Health Policy Advocate. Thank you.
And those are our two requests.
Great. Thank you, moderator. We'll close public comment for that portion. To believe takes us to item 3, the consent calendar, discussion and possible approval of the April 19th, 2024 committee meeting minutes. Does any member wish to remove or edit any items from the consent calendar? Okay, I can't see everybody today. No hands up? Okay, I had to move around my panels on my screen so I could see everybody. Okay, if in seeing no changes, do we have a motion for approval? Or I'll motion to approve the April 19th, 2024 committee meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. This is Eleanor Reedy.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public? We'll start in the room and then we will go online. Do we have any comments in the room, Steve?
Yes.
Hi, good morning. Ben Caldwell, MFT. Just a very minor thing. On page 6, line 33, just from context, and I may have misspoken at the time, but I think what shows there as with should be without. Thank you.
And that is it for the room.
Okay, moderator, would you open public comment?
We are open for public comment on the meeting minutes. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, I just want to check in with Christina about whether the comment, the change noted by Mr. Caldwell can be adjusted as a typo, or do we need to change the motion?
I think it's okay. If you recall, sound quality was pretty bad that day, so going back and listening to the recording was a struggle. So I'll go ahead and make that change as amended, and you can make the motion to approve the April 19th, 2024 committee meeting minutes as amended.
Okay, I will make that motion. Eleanor, are you good with seconding the amended motion?
Yes.
Okay. Sabina, do we need to go back out for public comment since we amended the motion?
No, it's fine since that came from our public comment.
Okay, great. All right, Christina, please take the vote.
Okay, Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
motion carries.
Great. Thank you. On to item 4, the overview of the purpose of the committee. And Steve, I believe you are handling this one.
Yeah, that will be me. Good morning. We like to do this at each of our meetings, just to kind of go over to see the work that we've done in the past meeting and look forward to some of the items that we are still considering and may be working on in the future. So at our last April 19th meeting, we discussed the possibility of early clinical exam eligibility. We also started the review of additional coursework requirements. Christy led us through that. And then we talked about considering changes to exam time regulations for the ESL candidates. And lastly, we looked kind of a cursory review of the survey, the pathway to licensure survey, what we received. It was just an update on that. There's a bunch of items that we have on possible future topics for the meetings. Some of this we'll be actually discussing today. And, in the near future, I think most of these will be kind of incorporated into our discussions. And some of those, the ones that we have left, 6-year rules for experience hours. We're going to be looking at the possibility of practice exams for board tests, looking at maybe our ability to offer free California law and ethics exam courses, age limits for passing the law and ethics exam, continuing education for supervisors, recruitment, trying to increase our recruitment for exam experts, licensure completion times and dropout rates. We still haven't really brought any data to the workforce committee on, the dropout rates through the licensure pathway. So it's something that we're still looking at. And now that we have somebody to look at more research, that might be feasible in the near future. And then also looking at ways that we can reduce application deficiencies. So there's a lot of work to be done, but we've done a lot of work already. So there you have it. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'll open the floor.
Great. Do we have any questions from fellow committee members? Seeing none, I don't have any questions either. Thank you, Steve. Moderator, well, actually, let me first go in the room. Do we have any public comments on this item in the room?
It doesn't appear so, no.
Okay. Moderator, please open public comment online.
We are open for public comment online. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And as a reminder to our mobile device users, if you're having trouble finding that hand button, you may need to hit the ellipses button, that's the ... in order to find that hand. We're going to take just a couple more seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment. Thank you, Steve. We will go on to Agenda 5, update and discussion regarding possible recommendation, to the board regarding permitting early eligibility to take the clinical examination and other potential changes to the licensing process. I think, Roseanne, we go to you for this one.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. So this is a continuation of a discussion that we had at the last Workforce Development Committee meeting, and it's kind of more of an update. So we've been working on the proposal. So basically applicants for licensure with the board as LMFTs, LCSWs, or LPCCs are required to take and pass 2 exams before getting licensed. There's a California Law and Ethics exam that has to be taken within their first year of registration and each year until passed. And then the clinical exam, which may only be taken upon completion of all education and experience requirements and passing the California Law and Ethics exam. And then we accept the passing score on the clinical exam for 7 years. And just kind of a side note, we're not including LEPs in this discussion at this time. They have sort of a different process. They're required to take and pass 1 exam. And so we would need to discuss LEPs separately because their process is so different. But continuing on talking about the other 3 license types, once an applicant has completed their required experience for licensure, they submit their application to the board. The board then evaluates the application, which can take some time. And if everything is met, then they're they're permitted to begin taking the clinical exam. So this can be a lengthy process for applicants because they have to get all of their hours, get approval, and then they have to take the clinical exam until they pass it to become licensed. So at our last meeting, the committee discussed possibly allowing applicants to take the clinical exam early once 1,500 experience hours are gained, in hopes that that might help reduce barriers to licensure. And we discussed that the Board of Psychology is currently doing something somewhat similar with their exam. There was actually a bill that ran this past year to allow early eligibility to take that exam. So at the last meeting, our committee just directed staff to examine this issue further, including looking at relevant statutes and regulations that would be involved in amendments, consulting with legal counsel, and examining potential issues of concern. So we're in the process of doing that and looking at this proposal. We're discussing it currently with the examination unit. And upon evaluation of the statutes and regulations that would need to change, it's sort of looking like it might possibly be beneficial to do this as a more, to address some other sort of interrelated issues, possibly all at once rather than just doing this one particular change at that time, because there's several issues with the exam process that pose some barriers or that need to be updated. And it might be less sort of burdensome or confusing for applicants if we did it all at the same time, rather than trying to do a bunch of different changes. So that's something that's up for discussion as we move through this process. But I wanted to kind of give you an outline of what we're thinking, and then I plan to present language preliminary language in October for detailed discussion. But where our discussion kind of went was, instead of requiring that 1,500 experience hours be gained in order to take the clinical exam, it might actually be more beneficial to propose that it be based on the actual number of direct clinical counseling hours rather than all hours that include supervision, client-centered advocacy, things like that, because it's really the direct clinical counseling hours that are thought to prepare the student to take the clinical exam. And so we were kind of talking about the idea of proposing 875 hours of experience performing direct clinical counseling. That's about half of the direct clinical counseling hours required for licensure for the 3 license types. And we thought that might be a proposal that would better ensure readiness to take the exam, rather than if somebody tried to front load all of their, research or client-centered advocacy hours in order to take the exam. So that's what we're kind of discussing that. Some other issues that came up in the discussion of the statute in general was allowing an associate possibly to choose when they take the California Law and Ethics exam, making that change possibly at the same time if that change is desired. Right now, we require it to be attempted every year of registration until passed, and then it has to be passed before a subsequent number is issued. This can cause hardships at times for individuals because they forget to pass it, or for some reason they don't get a chance to take it before they renew their registration, and then they realize it at the last minute, and they're scrambling to try to get an exam date. At the time when that requirement was implemented, there was no annual CE requirement for registrants. We now have an annual CE requirement for registrants. So we're kind of thinking that possibly that might offer some public protection, in lieu of taking that exam every year to ensure that they're studying law and ethics. And then they could take it when they feel most comfortable to take it, and they would have to have it passed before they either applied for licensure or they got a subsequent registration number. So that's one other thing that might fit nicely with this proposal that would be beneficial. Another thing is that we don't currently have an age limit on the California Law and Ethics exam. That the Law and Ethics exam has been in existence as it is in the law now for about 7 years. We never built in an age limit. We're finding that occasionally we might be seeing people come back with a very old California law and ethics score as people that have taken this exam may have been registered and passed it when it came out in 2016, maybe decide to take a break for 10 years or so. They could come back with a passing score. So we really need to put some sort of a safeguard in there to make sure that applicants are current in law and ethics, and this might be a good place to do that. We also have a lot of public comment and have had a lot of discussion in the past at the board and committee meetings regarding what we call the 6-year rules. And that is the allowable length of time a registration number is valid and that experience hours are valid. We were thinking that if we placed a 7-year age limit on the exam score, which that already exists for the clinical exam, it might be worthwhile to extend the allowable length of time a registration number is valid from 6 to 7 years, and the amount of time supervised experience hours are valid from 6 to 7 years, just to make the process a little bit more accessible for somebody who might have life circumstances happen. But we still want to make sure that people have current hours. So we're kind of working through what that might look like. And then we're kind of thinking that upon application for license issuance, rather than having all of these different requirements at the end, at different times the exam may be passed, it might be more simple for everybody to, upon application for a license, require the applicant's experience hours, clinical exam score, and California law and ethics score to all be no more than 7 years old. So it's all fairly straightforward. There's not as many nuances. And then finally, another thing that kind of fits along these lines, but may be able to be pulled out into a separate proposal, would be our other 6-year rule, which is allowing associates. Right now, associates with a subsequent registration number are prohibited from working in a private practice. And that's received a lot of feedback over the years. We discussed it at the board meeting a couple of years ago, and there was not any desire among the board or the associations. There was not support for removing that prohibition. There's thought for a lot of different reasons that it serves a public protection purpose, but we've kind of been examining whether it might be feasible to propose an associate with a subsequent number to request a one-time 2-year hardship extension to work in one particular private practice setting where they can finish gaining their hours, have continuity of care with their existing clients, things like that, if they were to submit a request. So there's a lot of moving parts here. They're all kind of interrelated. I'm going to bring a proposal. It's going to be a preliminary proposal in October. And the committee can take a look at it, see if they think that it's worth doing all at once or, in various pieces, or maybe there's some pieces that are not appropriate, but we want to have that discussion. Right now, we're trying to, it's fairly complex, so we're trying to look at all the details from every angle and sort of see how that would work. So with that, I will open it up for discussion.
Great. Thank you, Roseanne. I think it makes sense if we have several related items that we can do them all at one time for efficiency's sake, as long as we don't overcomplicate and then confuse folks. So committee members, any initial questions before we go to the public for comment? Dr. Walker.
Yes, thank you. No question, but just some supporting, just some support to staff. I think this is a really good update. And I agree in continuing the conversation, looking forward to what comes back in October. But I really do appreciate hearing that we're looking at safeguards and hardships and exceptions and things like that, given the, how would I say, some of the practices that are somewhat been grandfathered in, and we should take a look at these items. So kudos to staff on bringing back this update. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Sorry, are we going to go through the memo or just, because I had a question on the memo?
Sure. Yeah, I think this is a time, if you have specific questions on section of the memo, I think this would
Yeah,
be.
it's just a simple question. It's on, so this would be item 5, and it would be not the last page, but second to last page. So I guess it's number 5 in the very last paragraph. It's just basically saying ASWB discussion. So it was just saying something about it indicates WB indicates that their requirement is taking the exam at 18 months of experience is based on psychometric research, but was agreeable to the board specifying numbers of hours. So I was just wondering, so are they basically saying that 18 months of experience? It was unclear to me, that statement. So are they saying that, what is the psychometric research? I was just curious what it said.
So we had a discussion when we were talking about the 1,500, allowing the clinical exam to be taken at 1,500 hours. We had a discussion with both ASWB and the NBCC, who administers the LPCC exam. And ASWB, their general stance is that they typically require 18 months of experience, which is almost 2 years, for the clinical exam to be taken, because they have psychometric research that basically you need to have some clinical experience before you take an exam. So generally they ask for 18 months. They indicated that they would be open if the board put together a proposal, they would be open to considering a sooner time frame, if we could justify it. So we couldn't just, decide tomorrow we're gonna allow people to take their exam at 1,500 hours or 875 hours or whatever we land on. We would have to go through them and basically justify it to them, because they do administer the exam. It did not seem like if we can justify whatever proposal the board ends up deciding on, that would be another step we would have to take. None of this is a very complex proposal. It's not a quick sort of fix. We would have to go through several steps, including discussing with ASWB and NBCC. But our discussion with them was positive in terms of that it sounded like they would be open to it. They didn't just say, no, you can't do that. It has to be 18 months. So
Okay, thank
does that clarify?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think what we're proposing here kind of addresses what their concern is with the psychometrician. That what they brought back is focusing this on clinical hours. If we focus that on clinical hours, then I think that's the concern of the psychometricians. If you don't have that clinical experience here, you might be at a disadvantage to actually passing the exam. So instead of the 18 months of just any kind of practice, it's focusing on that clinical. So I think it sets people up, candidates up for possible better success.
Right. We want to kind of strike a balance, which is what we're trying to do. We don't want to have an undue we want to try to reduce a barrier that it takes a long time after gaining all your hours to do licensure, but we don't want to set people up for failure that they don't have enough experience and they're trying to take the exam before they're really ready for it. So we're trying to strike that balance.
Thank you.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Seeing no other board member or committee member questions, are there any questions or comments in the room?
Yeah, Kristen. Yes, we do.
Okay, good morning again. My name is Shanti Ezrin. I'm with CAMPS. First of all, just really wanted to appreciate the work that staff has put into this and all of the research to, I think I counted all 7 of the proposed considerations, and the meeting materials were super helpful. In general, we really support allowing applicants to take the clinical exam earlier than completion of the 3,000 clinical hours, and don't see a direct harm in public protection in allowing for such a change. And also just really appreciate the other refinements to address interrelated issues all at once. And we are looking forward to the preliminary language when ready in October. Thank you.
Good morning, Ben Caldwell, MFT. Also, thank you, Roseanne. These are interconnected ideas. They're addressed well in principle here. Obviously, looking forward to seeing the actual language, but in principle, all of this looks great. Similar to committee member Uribe, I did have a question about ASWB and NBCC, and I suppose it would apply to AMFTRB as well. ASWB and NBCC have both suggested that they would be open to the board's proposal here. That language is a little bit non-committal. So just for the sake of the process, I'd want to make sure that the board doesn't get too far down the road of legislative or regulatory change without more certainty that those organizations would in fact accept what the board is proposing. And then in related to that psychometric data that ASWB was talking about, I would be curious if they have references or citations they could share. My understanding of the research in this area is that pretty consistently research demonstrates that pass rates are higher the closer someone takes an exam after their graduation date. So I have not seen any studies, and perhaps they are out there, I just haven't seen them. I haven't seen any studies that suggest that more clinical experience post-graduation actually leads somebody to be more likely to pass. Thank you.
And we have one more comment. Oh, can we hold on for just a moment? Dr. Walker, are you still online? Hold on here. We have to get back one more board member here to continue.
Okay.
Pause for a second.
Did we lose her?
Yeah, I think so. Are we making?
No, it's just public comment.
Sabina, could we proceed since we are not really taking any actions on this item? It's really just an update and kind of an overview. Would that be okay?
If we lost a quorum, unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to hold a meeting.
Okay.
So we should,
hold on then.
if she's our quorum, we should just pause for a moment, try to find her. Thank you.
Okay.
I guess I can fill the, oh no, we gotta continue the, let's get out for my comments, but
Steve, should we take a 5-minute break?
yeah, why not? Let's do a 5-minute break.
Okay. Apologize to waiting public commenters. Thank you for your patience with us.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Member Walker.
So sorry about that. Thank you.
When you're ready, please turn on your camera.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now will wait for Eleanor. There we go.
All righty. It looks like we're back
I think we're back.
and
Perfect.
ready to go back to public comment in the hearing room.
Christine?
Yeah, we'll turn it over to Christine.
Okay, thank you. And as you may know, I have an LCSW and an LMFT. And as a result, I am supervising LMFTs, LCSWs, and LPCCs. And so we all appreciate all of the work you're doing to make this proper for all of the trainees and the interns who are on this pathway. And one of the confusions they may have as they're going through this is, now do I only have to get 1,500 hours and then I'm going to be licensed? So it'll be very important to clarify, because they don't understand that you start to examine and then you may pass or you may not. So the point is to be basically competent so that you will be a good therapist and to preserve the protection to the consumer public. So what I try to help them understand is we're doing the best job we can for the good of everyone. So as you're doing the research on this, it will be very important to explain that that's this process so that you can begin the process, so that as you're going through it, you will emphasize the clinical work and the other stuff backs it up. So as you're going through this, it doesn't take longer and longer and longer. And so that's why the package is 3,000 hours, not 4,500 hours. Okay, thank you.
And I just want to weigh in there because Christine makes a really good point, is that as we discuss this, this is a very large, significant change. Whether we do it in pieces or we do it all, decide to do it all at once, it will not be something that can be implemented quickly, and it will be something that needs to be implemented with a lot of care, because we don't want people to be confused. It's a big change in the process. So it is going to be something that's for the board, the committee and the board will be, if we pursue this, we'll be talking about this for a long time before we run it. We want to do it very carefully. And there would be a lot of outreach that would be involved.
Thank you, Roseanne. Are there any other comments in the room?
Nope, that's it for the room.
Moderator, do we have any commenters online?
Yes, we do. First, we're going to hear from Jasmine Smith, followed by Selena Lou Raphael. Hold on, Jasmine. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to just agree with some of the comments that were shared about wanting to make sure that we have the support for this change. I did want to add that the 6-year exemption has been a concern that a lot of associates has brought to us, specifically those that are connected to the military and needing support and being able to complete their hours. I also wanted to propose potentially offering the CEUs, because I know it was stated that our associates now have to do the continuing education credits. And for us who are licensed, we typically are engaging in CEUs when we renew our license. So even if the year process of completing, I think the example given was if someone has passed it in 2016, wanting to make sure that they're still up to date on the information. So maybe rather than requiring a new test, maybe there could be CEUs that they're able to complete to finish, because that can help with some of the challenges that people endure with the testing. Thank you so much.
All right, next we're going to hear from Selena Lou Raphael. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thank you so much. I wanted to echo the statements from other people. Selena Lou Raphael from the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. Really thank you for the care and attention you have brought to this issue and all of the details related to the many barriers for people to licensure. So I just wanted to thank you for all of this work. We do agree with the ability to test with the 875 direct clinical hours or the 1500. We are looking forward to this proposal in October so that we can take a little bit of a closer look at it and overview it with our members. So thank you very much for that. And also the consideration of extending the 6 years due to life circumstances, as the previous commenter mentioned, whether it be the military, life circumstances, illness, births, other things, giving consideration to the life circumstances that may require somebody to take a little bit longer to do the test, but and meet all of the requirements. But we look forward to the proposal in October and providing feedback. Thank you so much.
Next, we're going to hear from Lisa Wininger. I hope that's how I say your last name. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
You got it, Dr. Wininger here. I'm going to really say thank you also to the board as a whole for bringing these changes forth. It's really important for removing barriers to licensure. And I will echo Mr. Caldwell's comments around the data that we may have available to make some decisions specifically around the timing of the test. I'm an LPCC, and just based on the way the licensure law works in California, plus the opportunity that the NBCC offers for taking the NCMHCE early, I ended up taking it twice. I took the previous version and then the new revised version, which was a burden, and I did it, of course, to finish my licensure process here. Neither one of those I felt really was about my clinical work. They were very much academic exercises of studying to the test. Both versions were. The newer version is better designed, but it's still studying for a test. So I really appreciate the comment that doing it right after or close to graduation from the master's makes sense when the student is in academic mode. And I would also argue that don't we want them to be more clinically prepared by making sure that they have this proficiency in hand before they really embark on that long stretch of gaining hours. So having it front loaded seems to make more sense to me. And I would like to see the data on needing the extra clinical hours before we're ready. Thank you so much.
And that was our last request for public comment online.
Great, thank you. Roseanne, I think we got some good feedback there, and I know as part of this process, you're always great about working with our stakeholders to make sure that we've considered all of the possible scenarios here, but super excited about some of these changes and just making this process make more sense and get some more clinicians into the field. So any other comments from committee members? Seeing none. Roseanne, do you have any closing comments or?
Nope, I think that we'll bring the actual language proposal in October for a first look, and I think that we can have a discussion then and go from there with any changes or tweaks or concerns. So.
Great, thank you. I think that takes us to item 6, discussion and possible recommendation regarding amendments to the child abuse assessment and reporting coursework requirements for all board regulated professions. And I think we're going to Christy here for this one.
Yes, we are. Thank you. So the purpose of this item is to review the child abuse assessment and reporting coursework requirement for all of the board's license types. And this is we're focusing here on applicants who hold an in-state degree. A 7-hour course on this topic is required for all LMFT, LPCC, and LCSW applicants, and is required for LEPs upon first license renewal. It's required by statute, and the statute also mandates training for licensed psychologists under the Board of Psychology. The board, BBS, we amended our regulations pertaining to this course that took effect July 1st of 2023 that required the course to be taken within the 5 years prior to the date the board received an application for licensure or renewal, and also to require the course to be taken from a board-accepted continuing education provider. There are some different requirements in course timing among the license types and professions. There's a chart in attachment A that shows a comparison. All of the content requirements are the same regardless, but LMFT and LPCC applicants have to obtain this course before obtaining an associate registration. LCSW applicants must take the course prior to obtaining a license. And as I mentioned, LEP licensees take this course at first license renewal, so 2 years into their license. So what we're recommending is that we make this consistent among the license types. So, and we suggest that for LCSW, we require the coursework taken prior to associate registration rather than prior to licensure, because registrants are mandated reporters and are, may encounter situations where they need to evaluate that need to report. Staff also recommends that LEP law be amended to require this coursework prior to licensure rather than prior to first license renewal, because they don't register as associates, they just apply for licensure. And the reason for that, there's a couple of reasons. Although LEPs do get some training on this topic because they have to have experience as a credentialed school psychologist, I looked into that and they only get 1.5 hours of training during each year of employment. That's the minimum mandatory requirement. But even though they have that, part of the problem is when we require continuing education in specific courses, it often leads to failures of a CE audit. So we audit somebody, we say, did you do your 36 hours? Did you take this specific coursework that was required? That is often a reason people don't realize it. Somehow they miss that. So that could be a consequence there. So that's fairly common. And again, they're mandated reporters. They could, they might have just minimal training in a school setting, but as an independent practitioner, it's a little different. So again, we're recommending that be required prior to licensure. I guess I'll stop here. Is there any questions at this point on course timing?
Any questions from board members at this point? Seeing none, I think, Christy, you can continue.
Okay. There, on the acceptable course providers, the statute requires the training to be obtained from an accredited or approved educational institution, including extension courses offered by those institutions, or a continuing education provider specified by the board by regulation, or a course sponsored or offered by a professional association or a local, county, or state department of health or mental health, and approved or accepted by the board. When we did the regulations that took effect in July 2023, our regulations mirrored the acceptable providers listed in statute, but we got rid of number 3 because it creates a lot of confusion because there's a list of courses that applicants have to take, and the other courses cannot be taken from these kind of providers, and it creates confusion for not only staff but applicants. However, even though we did that in the regulations, this is still in the statute, which does override the regulation. So we really should have pursued a statutory change at the time. So we do recommend doing so. But if the committee would like to keep that option, then we should amend the regulations to allow for those type of providers and to specify the criteria for board approval or acceptance of those types of courses, which could get a little complicated as well. We prefer to streamline it so it's, the requirements are clear and consistent, but again, that's up for some discussion. The other thing with this statute is that it also does apply to the Board of Psychology. So if we did pursue a statutory change, we would kind of have to figure out the best way to do that. Because we don't want to, negatively affect what the Board of Psychology is doing. So we would have to have some discussions with them on that. And that statute also requires the board to exempt an applicant from this coursework if they apply for an exemption for this section and they show to the satisfaction of the board that there would be no need for the training in the applicant's practice because of the nature of that practice. We're not aware of any applicant trying to claim exemption. This is another place we might want to consider a statutory change to strike this because all mental health professionals are mandated reporters. And even if a professional just only sees adults, they could become aware of a reportable situation. The last piece of this is the 5-year age limit that we implemented in July 2023. We found an unintended consequence is that this course is often taken within an applicant's qualifying degree program. So the 5-year limit results in applicants having to take that 7-hour course again. And at the time, we didn't have the continuing education for registrants, 3 years in law, 3 hours of law and ethics every year. And they also take the law and ethics exam. So, the justification for that age limit was that the laws pertaining to child abuse may change from time to time, but now that they have the CE on law and ethics, it's likely they're obtaining the most latest reporting requirements. And if they're working with children or families, it's also likely that their employer may require it or provide training in this area. A note just regarding out-of-state applicants, if we do change anything in the regulations, it would apply to out-of-state applicants. I don't see that there would be a problem there. I just kind of wanted to include that here, that regulation section applies to, actually the statute does as well, to out-of-state applicants. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion here.
Okay, first look to my fellow board members. Any initial comments or questions here?
I have some. So let me see. I think it's just, if we're going to go through the document, there's some things on, let me see. So attachment A, it talks about out of state. Hang on a second, let me look at it real quick. Maybe I'm just, don't want to look too much into it, but I just had questions. So it's kind of a grid, just basically saying, about the element, the different professions. And one of it says about, hang on a second. Okay, so it says what the course content requirement, and it says about, there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth line down on the first LMFT, it says severe neglect, general neglect, willful cruelty, and justifiable punishment, corporal punishment, or injury and abuse in out-of-home care. I don't know. So I don't know if that was out-of-home care, because generally child abuse is kind of in-home care. So maybe I'm just reading too much into it. So that was just a question, because the allegations are generally against the parents versus like somebody else, unless they knew willfully or intentionally left them with someone. That was just one question.
Christy, do you want to jump in here?
No, that's a good point. So I took a note on that, so we can definitely look into that and how this is worded.
Okay. Another one, age of, I wrote a bunch of things and I kind of like looked through my notes real quick. Okay, so in number, what about? Oh, somewhere in there, the age of, I think it was with licensed clinicians, it says about eligibility to apply. And then it says age of experience and length of, hang on a second, you might have to come back to me. So it seemed like in different portions, it seemed like there was areas where it could have been a little bit more clear. Because I know it said something about if somebody wants to basically challenge the, say that they have the experience. I don't know if it's outlined somewhere where it kind of says, hey, if you have, like, say you're a child welfare worker for so many years, or, so say, and I know they were saying something like nobody's challenged it, but, technically, I know in schools, they'll challenge taking certain courses, like if you're in Title IV. So I was just wondering if that is outlined somewhere, what might be some situations, and if, say, somebody wants to challenge it, is there like an exam, or I'm just saying, so there's more of a, is it case by case? So I don't know if that's written somewhere.
It is not written anywhere. We would have to establish that criteria in our regulations, is my understanding. We haven't had anybody request that. It might get a little bit complicated for staff too, because we have such a large population of applicants. It might be a little, we would have to set some criteria. People would have to demonstrate that. We'd have to figure out how to do that without slowing down our evaluation processes too much. So that is something we would have to work on, some language. If we decide to, continue allowing that exemption.
Okay, so I don't know if I should continue. So there's another one on, I guess it's 4D, in the same document. And it basically talks about the Board of Psychology shall exempt an applicant who applies for exemption from this section and who shows to the satisfaction of the board that there will be no need for the training of the applicant's practice because of the nature of their practice. So again, kind of like, just, I don't know if there's something more specific, or, so it seems like it should be more maybe measurable, or at least some kind of criteria. It's just a suggestion before there may be something out there already.
Right. If we did want to continue allowing the exception, we would look at Board of Psychology and see what they're doing with that, and look at that criteria for sure.
And so, like I said, I don't know if I should bring all those, but they're just things that stood out. I think it's on, let me look at it. Somewhere down here, let's look. I believe it's for like LCSW. And it talks about an age of at least 21 years to be able to qualify to take the exam, or to get your, I can't remember if it's to take the exam or to get your number. But I was just, because I'm just thinking nowadays there's some people very young that get their doctorate degree, right? I was just reading an article. It was a kid, one of the youngest kids. So I'm just wondering, what about if you have someone really young who has a doctorate degree or master's degree that wants to, become a clinician? Is that something we might need to look at, as far as limiting the age to 21 years?
So you're talking about applicants for licensure, having a minimum age. So I know for social work has that, but the other professions, I believe, do not. I'm searching our statutes and regulations booklet right now. Associate registration is 18 years of age. I'm not seeing it for the other. Oh, LMFT for licensure is 18 years of age. I'm assuming, anyway, associate registration for professional clinical counselor is also 18. So anyway, that's kind of a different, I think that's a separate discussion than the coursework. But if you have concerns, we can note.
No, I'm just bringing some of these up. And I mean, like I said, maybe this might not be the right place. So the last thing I think was just, I think it was number 6, and it talked about.
Eleanor, can you hold on just a second?
Okay.
I'm sorry. Dr. Walker. I'm sorry. Need to make sure she has audio.
And this is Sabina. While we're paused for a moment, I want to make sure we redirect our discussion to the coursework requirements as presented by board staff. So we got to try to keep our focus on the agenda item.
She's back.
So I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Christy, is there anything else you want to add before we go to public comment?
No, hold just a second. We've got a quorum issue.
We lost Dr. Walker.
Yeah.
Okay.
David, can you make Annette Walker a panelist, please?
Working on it right now. We're just going to make both of them and figure out which is which in a minute.
Let's just keep both connected. She's having connectivity issues.
Okay, we're back on. Okay. Wendy, I don't know, public comment or additional comments from the board?
Dr. Walker, I just want to check in with you if there's any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, and my apologies for the technical difficulties today. And no, I don't have any questions at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really quickly, this is Christy Shields, Regulations Counsel for the board. Madam Chair, I was just hoping that we could get feedback, though, from the committee just before, we take more public comment. There's 4 areas that the staff have asked for your input on and to get some direction on. The first one is on page 2 of the memo about acceptable course providers. So could we go through each topic that's underlined in bold and see what the committee thinks, or if they have any ideas of what direction you would like to give staff as well as the board as a recommendation?
Sure.
So that would be great.
Yeah. Christy, do we want to kind of back
Sure.
ourselves up a little bit to that? And
Yeah.
then
So let's
we can
talk.
go section by section. then.
Yeah, so course timing would be the first thing. That's okay. No, I really appreciate it. Course timing would be the first question. So how does the committee feel about having LCSW applicants take the course prior to obtaining a registration for consistency with LMFT and LPCC, and then also having LEP applicants take it upon application for licensure rather than at first renewal?
Sure. Yeah, that seems to me in line with the work we've been doing as a committee and a board to create consistency amongst the different license types where it makes sense. So that seems to make sense to me. I'll check in with my colleagues.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, Wendy. Consistency across the board. Yeah, that's the goal.
So Christy, I think that this is Christy Shields again, Regulations Counsel. That would be a statutory change.
Correct.
Because currently it's on the first license renewal, and if you're going to switch it to the associate, then we would need to actually amend BPC section 28, because right now it's on the marriage and family therapist, LPCC, LCSW license, not the associate registration. So that would be a switch, and that would need to be amended in that statute. So is everyone in agreement with that direction to staff?
Also
Yes.
in agreement. This is Eleanor Reedy.
Okay. I think we have agreement amongst the committee here on that.
Okay. Next would be the acceptable course providers. So I guess there's two pieces here. Do we want to do we want to keep or remove option 3 or propose removing option 3 to help with consistency in terms of all the other list of courses that can be taken, because none of those other courses that we require applicants to take can be taken from a provider that's not a board accepted CE provider? Or do we want to allow that? The drawback there again is, it's more confusing for applicants and a little harder for staff sometimes to make that determination if it's an acceptable course. And then the other, I guess that's so that would be a statutory change and a regulatory change, both. So,
Okay.
or do we want to keep that and, keep that option?
I think my initial reaction there is to keep the consistency with, how we're handling other coursework, reduce confusion on the part of our licensees and board staff, but I'll check in. Dr. Walker.
Forgive my ignorance here but would it change a fee structure or anything, or fees related to those courses, if any?
No.
Great, okay.
So, I don't know, I would say that if we were to make the change, I would say maybe we can bring more of the board in to talk about it, just because it would be a bigger change. So that's a possible consideration, just to maybe look at it a little bit closer.
Okay.
And I would assume if we're making legislative, statutory, or regulatory changes, those go to the full board as well before they move forward.
Exactly. And there's, ample room for stakeholder comment as well. So throughout that process. The next component is the statute allows for some exemptions. If they show to the satisfaction of the board that there would be no need for the training in the applicant's practice because of the nature of that practice. So the board would have to set some criteria and have an application to be exempt from that. Do we want to pursue, do we want to keep that exemption and set some criteria, or do we want to possibly strike that? Because again, the exemption here, the way it's written is that, they could apply for the exemption if they feel there's no need for the training in the applicant's practice due to the nature of that practice. So I suppose there could be practitioners who are not seeing clients at all. But I think most of our licensing population is. And again, even if they only see adults, we may not want to exempt them. So.
Any comments from committee members on this one?
I'm not sure if I understood what she just said. Can you restate your point?
Sure. So this would be a statutory change. So right now, the statute allows someone to apply for an exemption from taking the course. So to not have to take the course if they can show that there's no need for the training in the applicant's practice because of the nature of that practice. So what I'm asking is, do we want to keep that exemption and set some criteria or for when we would accept that? Or do we want to pursue saying, no, we don't want to offer any exemptions because we think that any of our licensees should have this course. All of our licensees should have this course because they are mandated reporters.
Yeah, this one's a little oddly worded for me. I mean, could there be a scenario where by virtue of what they do, because they're dealing with situations like this all the day, every day as part of their course, would that fall under an exemption so that maybe because it's part of their normal duties that maybe coursework would be duplicative, or this is like literally I don't deal with the situations at all.
Right. This is only for people who say, I don't deal with child abuse ever in my practice. I never come across it. Even though I'm a mandated reporter, I never come, I'll never have a situation where I come across it. It's hard for me to imagine somebody in that situation, maybe even if they're not doing clinical work. But I am not, I'm not a practicing professional myself, so I may not be aware. But that exemption is only for someone who says, I'll never come across it because of the nature of my practice.
And once again, you have to consider, though, their practice might change.
That's true, too.
And so at the time, they might not be, but later on, they might be practicing. I think what we're looking at is, I think staff is kind of supporting to get rid of that, is what we're really looking at, because it makes it, clearer, and it's something that's really important to have.
Just to weigh in further, this is Section 28 is kind of an older statute. It was combined with Board of Psychology, so it looks to me like something that was sort of negotiated in maybe at the time, a long time ago. Right now, I mean, it's our licensees, when they become licensed, they might work in a variety of settings across their career. So I think that I would be hesitant from a public protection standpoint to continue to, and we don't get this request really either. So not that, to my knowledge, we haven't gotten any of these. People are probably not
No.
aware of it.
Right.
But to exempt want to exempt yourself from learning any child abuse content is a little concerning, just because even if somebody's not dealing with it in their initial job for licensure, they might, later in their career. And I think it's important that they would have some exposure to it. And I think the course is only is it like 7 hours?
7 hours, yeah.
So I don't see it as an overwhelming burden. Most schools teach this anyways.
Right. Most of
So,
them have it in their degree.
I would be in favor of not allowing the exception because they are mandated reporters. Christy.
And so I think Regulations Counsel, Christy Shields, the other challenge is if you wanted to retain the current exemption in statute, you would have to develop a regulation to clarify what the criteria would be to allow the exemption. And what I'm hearing is we're not clear on what criteria we could ever develop. We couldn't see a scenario where you wouldn't need this training in the professions that you regulate. So that's the challenge. So the options are to retain the current statutory exemption and develop regulations that would specify what would be acceptable criteria to allow the exemption. Or the second option, which I am hearing from staff is what they recommend, is simply remove the authority to exempt someone from this training in Section 28D of the Business and Professions Code.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can I get a clarification?
Sure.
So, if you have someone with, say, 10, 20 years of child, working with child protective services that says they want to exempt themselves from this because of their experience, what would you tell that person?
Well, in that case, I mean, they would need to have, that goes back to what we would define with the waiver. I think in that instance, if they're working with children, we would definitely say you don't qualify for, depending on what the regulations we came up with, I think that would say you don't qualify for the waiver.
Right. I think even if they had taken it, because they're practicing as a licensed practitioner working with children, I don't see any way we could justify removing that course requirement.
So what I'm saying is,
Oh, you're frozen. Oh, there you go. You're back on. Yep.
I think there might be a little confusion because
Experience, I think.
there,
Hold on, we gotta pause for a second.
okay.
Sorry. There we go. We're back on.
somebody was saying something?
Oh, no, we're waiting. No, we're back on.
Yeah, we're back on, sorry. Yeah, I think this is not an exemption. This exemption is only for someone who says, I don't need this training because of the nature of my practice.
I understand.
I guess I can see where you're coming from, though. I think this is more for someone who says, I never work with kids. I don't need this training.
Yeah, and I think Eleanor, you're saying, they're saying we have this experience, so I've been trained in this. Why do I need to take
Yeah,
it? I think is
I
what you're
wasn't,
asking.
yes, so I can agree with, maybe they may not be working with somebody at that time, but it doesn't mean that they won't come across somebody.
Yeah.
So,
Just, as a side note with the technical things, I don't know how to do it, but there's a comment that we might be able to lower, if you can lower your video quality on your, how do you do that? Settings. If you click on the camera settings, so you'll see it'll say 1020, but then you can lower it to 720. So we'll be able to see you still, but it helps out with the bandwidth, I believe. So might try that. Thank you.
Okay. Um,
So I think we're looking for kind of feedback on that one then, just to make sure about the
Yeah.
waiver.
It seems to me like if nobody's ever asked for the exemption and we can't consider it, we can't come up with a scenario where an exemption would be granted, then it doesn't seem worth having the process in place and trying to define it in a way that we don't foresee. So
I agree.
mhm.
agree too.
Yeah.
Okay, great. The next question is that 5-year limit on the age of the course. Is there support for keeping that, but also keeping in mind that it's requiring a lot of people to, well, I don't know if it's a lot, we don't know exactly how many, but it does require some applicants to retake another 7-hour course if it's older than 5 years, but also considering they get the 3 hours in law and ethics every year of registration, they've been, likely taking the law and ethics exam. So this would be a regulatory change, and it might be something, this would only be a regulation change.
And Christy, this is Christy. Just to clarify, this change we could do probably before we sought any legislative
Correct,
changes. So we
right.
could do that. You could suggest that the board move forward with it now to alleviate the concerns that are brought forward here, with it being a duplicative, essentially, requirement.
Okay, it seems to me if we don't have an age limit on any other courses and that this topic is otherwise covered in courses we already require and exams they're already required to take, it doesn't make sense to require them to take an extra class if they're getting it somewhere else. That's my reaction. Committee members?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. If that's the correct interpretation, it would remove a barrier, potential barrier. Yeah.
I'm in agreement to strike it also.
Great. I think that was everything. So thank you for your feedback.
Okay. Then it sounds like we might be ready. Let me ask committee members any other follow-up questions or comments before we go to public comments? Okay, seeing none, do we have any public comment in the room?
Yes, we do.
Oh, you move me. Oh, okay. Oh, this
No,
Christie.
you're fine.
Wrong Christie.
They're asking me if you wanted to be up front. Ben Caldwell, MFT. This seems like it's primarily a social work discussion because for LMFTs and LPCCs with in-state degrees, the 7 hours of training in child abuse assessment and reporting is required by statute to be within the degree program. For that reason, the timing reason, certainly I would support removing that 5-year age limit. I can see the problems that would create. But for the other issues here, I would defer to my LCSW colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, hello again. My name is Shanti Ezra and I'm with CAMPT. Just a couple questions on the acceptable course providers topic. I guess my first question here is with the third option for a course sponsored or offered by a professional association, if staff can explain the difficulty in evaluating the quality of such courses and confusion the option causes in a bit more detail, I think that would be really helpful. Related to that, kind of wondering what are some of the things that associations can do to alleviate those points of confusion and keep that option rather than striking it completely. And then my other question is just looking at option 2 and option 3. I'm wondering what exactly is the difference between the two options? They seem very similar to each other, at least in writing. So yeah, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Sure. Option 2 and option 3 under acceptable course providers.
Yeah.
Okay. So professional associations, I think there are a bunch of them specified in regulation already as acceptable course providers. So there's no issue with that component really of option 3, because there's again, a good sized list of CE providers that are already accepted by the board that are professional associations. As you know, CAMPT is one of them. It's more the courses offered by a local county or state Department of Health or mental health. Those are the ones that are a little bit harder, for us to evaluate and, know the quality of the course or what's an acceptable proof of course completion. Do we take partial hours for that? Things like that.
Thank you for that. So that good sized list that you're referring to, that you're saying that that's under option 2?
Yes, that's
Okay.
already, yeah. Most professional associations that would offer this course are already.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, and just weighing in, the reasoning for the wanting to delete option 3, we have a CE process where all of the provided, we've gone through forming our CE regs. We've made sure that all of the agencies that fall under those are fully vetted by some sort of a process that the board has examined that CE approval agency's process. And so there's some agencies that option 3 brings in that maybe they're not approved CE providers. They don't fall under that process. So we don't have really any way of assuring the quality of what they're providing. Whereas the other ones, if they're approved by a approval agency that the board has vetted, we know that there's a certain quality to those courses because we know the procedure that they've had to go through to get that.
That is super helpful. Thank you, Roseanne. Thank you, Christy.
And no more comments from the audience here.
Okay, moderator, will you open up public comment for online participants?
Absolutely. We are open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And our first request comes from Selena Lou Raphael. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Thanks again, Selena Lou Raphael from the California Alliance of Child and Family Services. Thank you for this rich member discussion. I do agree with what's been said with all the members that I can't think of a scenario where an exemption would make sense. Even if you don't see children, the prevalence of child sexual abuse materials available online and many other things that would constitute sexual abuse don't always have to deal with people who are physically in the presence of children. So I think it's really important. And then the other piece is that there's a lot of changes happening in mandated reporting training. And so I do think that there's relevance as there's new material coming out on mandated supporting for families who are involved in the child welfare system, that I do think it's relevant to have ongoing training as this is evolving currently. Thank you.
And that was our only request online.
Okay, thank you. Christy, a question related to the comment we just received about, oh my gosh, and my brain just went blank. This is the last thing she said, and it just left my brain. But
She mentioned there are a lot of changes happening in mandated reporting training.
yes, yeah. So would those changes be captured in the law and ethics process in the CE course requirements?
I mean, we can't guarantee that. They have to have 3 hours. I would think if there is changes going on in mandated reporting training, that's something I would hope CE providers include because it's such an important area. But again, we can't guarantee that if it's just 3 hours. So, you know, that's a good point, something to think about. You know, if somebody is, you know, working in a position where they are often seeing children, I'm sure they are getting that. Well, I can't say that 100% either, but most likely they are. But again, you could have somebody who doesn't see children often or at all, who may not know the process or be as familiar with the process. So that is a good point.
Okay. Comments from committee members? Okay. So maybe Christy, on that point, we just kind of take that last comment into consideration as we're kind of moving forward for finalizing these, or do you need a vote from us? Do we need a
No,
motion?
we haven't drafted language yet, so that's something we'll take a look at. We'll also have to talk to the Board of Psychology as well about how we want to approach this. So we'll bring that back to the next committee meeting.
Great. Okay. Any other comments from committee? Okay. So then a question for logistics. We have kind of one substantive item. Steve, I'll kind of ask you, should we take a quick bio break and then come back and finish those last items? Does staff need a break?
That would be maybe great. I think quick break.
Okay. Should we do a 10-minute break and we'll come back and finish up the agenda?
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you. We will be back at 10:37. All right, it is 10:37. We have all our committee members here. Just looking for staff. There we are in the hearing room.
We are all here.
Okay, great. So I think we are moving to item 7, update on the licensure pathway survey. And Steve, this one is yours.
Thank you. So I'll give at the last meeting, April 19th, we talked about the pathway survey, and we had received 3,170 responses, complete responses from our survey. And that was a really good return. I was happy with that. Part of that, though, we did receive quite a bit also, a lot of extensive free-form comments on most of the questions that we were asking about barriers towards licensure and how they rated different barriers and how they affected them. There was a comment section in there. Looking through the data, I did have the attachment which shows you the actual kind of a overview of the data and the percentages and whatnot. Looking at that and kind of looking at the whole report itself and what we received back, and kind of looking at how this would help the board. I started looking at the comments more than the actual numbers, because the numbers do give you that kind of overview to pinpoint where to look at. And from that, I was more interested in seeing what were actually the people, the respondents were saying. And I think that gave a really good example of what things we can possibly work on And I went through, I did a review of all the comments, and categorized them into different areas, and basically did a whole kind of review of them and came down to some key thematic responses for each of the different areas. What was interesting is we had originally the actual pathway survey was really looking at barriers in education, supervision, and examination. I did add another one on there though, because there was a lot of comments, and what I'm claiming it's the licensure process. And that's kind of how the process of applying to the board and moving through the actual process of application and timeframes with reviews and such. So I think it's important to put that on there. And I did, just to go through some of the key findings. For education, people were really mentioning it was difficult to balance the demands of their work and going through the licensure process. Many people struggle to juggle full-time work, school, and unpaid practicum positions. There were practicum challenges. That means difficult finding placements that align with schedules and a perceived lack of culturally competent trauma-informed professors. That was a common concern. And additionally, there were a kind of a perceived notion that schools were not providing sufficient guidance on the licensure pathway and possible future exams. For supervision, overwhelmingly, there was a lot of concern about supervisor availability. That was finding qualified or available supervisors, and sometimes the high cost of supervision were a major issue. We did note in there, if you look at the report, people were paying for supervision. I think more though, it was the quality and the scheduling of supervision, and that's inadequate supervision environments and challenges in scheduling supervision hours around other commitments. That was very tough for many of the respondents. And then lastly, the knowledge of the supervisors about the licensure process. Some of the respondents believe that their supervisors really didn't have a full grasp on maybe the board requirements or just the licensure process in general, moving through all the way towards licensure. Examination, there was many respondents talking about the exam difficulties. Many found the exam to be lengthy, challenging, and stressful. Also, prepping for the exam. Some found that balancing exam preparation with full-time jobs and all their other responsibilities that they have, it made it hard for them to actually prep for the exams. And lastly, the financial burden of exams. That means looking at purchasing study materials and maybe even paying for re-exams was an issue that was brought up. And like I said, lastly, the licensure process. I think really we know, at least I know and staff know, one of the main concerns is the long wait times that exist for someone to get approved to take the exam. Additionally, there were concerns about clear information about the licensure process. Many found it difficult to keep up with changing licensure requirements and tracking specific hour types. And there were quite a few people mentioning the 6-year rule, as we discussed a little bit earlier before. And that was the 6-year rule where after 6 years, you cannot practice in a private practice. Amongst all the concerns that were raised, some people did actually raise some proposed solutions, so I took those into consideration. One of the proposed solutions was better guidance. So, more frequent discussions about licensure pathway during supervision, encouraging supervisors to talk about that. What's the next step for the registrant in the licensure process? Making sure that supervisors have updated resources, and those would be, resources that the board could produce and present, and make sure that the supervisors have that as a tool to help their registrants. Big solution was streamline the process. That's implementing online portal for supervised hours and offering clear guidelines from the board. And then financial support. Finding ways to introduce grants or scholarships to assist with exam fees and supervision costs. That was raised as a solution. Looking through all this, you know, right now this committee has done a lot of work, and some of the stuff that we talked about earlier, I think we are currently in the process of working on the exam process. In the background, we are always continuing to look at better materials. We can definitely look at other ways that we can ensure that the supervisors and the registrants and the pathway for licensure is definitely easier to understand. I put out there, as you note, in the current efforts that we're doing. Currently, like we just talked about, we are looking at, you know, doing a holistic review of additional coursework requirements to increase the consistency and clarity of what education that our registrants and licensees need to have. We're looking at, as we spoke about today, early admittance to the exam and the clinical exams. Also, that chance of having somebody having the ability to take the exams when you feel you are prepared, instead of currently, as we have it with the law and ethics, you have to take it every year. We are also looking at the English as a second language, reviewing that to make it simpler and clearer to get those accommodations. And then, like always, we are looking at ways to implement procedural changes to make sure we really cut down on those application processing times. Right now, we are looking at, one of the things that was talked about was the supervision forms and keeping paperwork. We are looking at online practices, possibly to have an online portal for that to make that easier for the registrants. And then additionally, we are putting our, actually it should be in place by the end of the year fully, is the registration applications online. So that will kind of assist in that process. I think one thing that we really haven't talked about, and I'm unsure, just to be honest, I'm unsure where we could actually work on this, is the, you know, supporting, we currently support HCI in their grants and scholarships. I don't know if there's something else we can do to kind of further that as a board, but that might be something to explore. So I think it was a great survey. I think it gave us some really good information. What I'm really presenting here was the overview, and wanted to see if there's something in here from the committee that they really want us to focus on, or if there's something that you think we missed on this. If I can open it up.
Thank you, Steve. One quick comment before kind of note some other items on reducing the wait times for licensure applications. So you noted in the report some procedural changes to make that more efficient, but I don't want to omit discussion that, you know, there has been staffing increases and allocated resources there, and then that's part of a continued plan to make sure that we're reducing those wait times as well. Am I correct on that?
Correct. I mean, there's what we've done currently for that is not only where we're working on staffing, doing the reorganization of our license and registration unit, concurrently working on putting the registration applications online. And then additionally, what we are doing is we are currently looking at ways to ease, we're implementing procedures and tools for evaluators to be able to evaluate hours quicker and more efficiently. So is consistently going on in the background.
Okay, thank you. And then it seems like, and I guess as a public member, so I don't always know the process here, but do we have avenues or opportunities where we're communicating with supervisors? Like, do we know who they are, and are there opportunities for us to sort of regularly educate and remind them and share materials about the licensure process so that that's something that they have readily at hand? They don't have to go digging for it on our website. Is that just sort of an educational opportunity there that might go with something else that we already do with supervisors?
That's one of my things that we've been talking about. There's always an opportunity to be able to provide more information. Currently, right now, we really don't track. We do have the ability now to see who is a supervisor. I think more importantly is to look at ways that we can produce more materials, or maybe even do kind of outreach events for supervisors to allow that better communication and, collaborating with them more. That's what, at least what I'm kind of dreaming of and thinking of. We currently have some resources. Christy has done supervisor like FAQs, and
We don't have an FAQ yet, but we have a tips for supervisors when taking on a new supervisee that was just released a couple months ago, and I am working on a supervisor FAQ. We've focused on publications for associates, but we haven't focused as much, but we are working toward that, absolutely.
And I think that's, we don't have the plan here for that, but I think that is one of our focuses, is to really produce more materials, make it more accessible at the same time we're looking at website design, making it more accessible for supervisors, and working with associations and stuff to make sure that they know when we produce these materials that those materials are out there for them. And I think, really kind of, if there's a way we can stress the importance of supervision and the job that they sign up for and the commitment they make and how great that is, and just trying to support them in that. So.
That's great. Thank you. And then just an observation that, not surprising to any of us, big part of the discussion, how much licensees have to pay for supervision, and then the difficulty in acquiring hours when a large portion of those are not paid. So those continue to be big financial barriers, and kind of like you said, I'm not entirely sure. We've supported legislation that helps address those issues, but I'm not sure exactly what the opportunities are there. And I'll stop talking here because I do see Dr. Walker with her hand up, and I want to
That's
take all
okay.
the air out of the room.
I'm
So-
enjoying listening to you. It's a great conversation. Thank
And-
you, Steve. Thank you for providing us this feedback today. I think I'm hearing a great opportunity for us to work together to possibly prioritize your list from the feedback that you just provided, to provide some short-term and long-term turnarounds, if you will. From some of the things that you mentioned, it seems like there's an opportunity for us to share resources that are already available, within our realm, to share with supervisors and other stakeholders. And so, is it possible for you to just prioritize what you just shared with us and do some short-term and long-term goals here? Because there seems like there's just some things that we can do like tomorrow, and we don't want to miss that opportunity.
Well, I think that sounds like a good idea. Actually, that's something that I could probably bring back to the October meeting.
Great.
Really showing what we're working on, maybe more in depth of what we're working on, and then maybe bringing back some possible considerations for the committee to, give us the support in moving forward on those. But I think that's a great idea. And to kind of go back on also with Wendy's concern about the payment for supervision and such, I maybe then I bring back to at that point, maybe looking at the data that we have for that particular item and having a discussion to see if there's anything that the board can do, to assist in that. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I really appreciate having access to the report. I feel like it says so much from a lot of people, and so I think if we can kind of just really take a look at that, that would be, I think, really beneficial to help reduce some barriers. I'm also glad to hear there's a lot of people what some of the needs are. Some of them being financial. Just kind of it gives us a little picture of what people are struggling with, because I feel like if we can somehow help support them, that would help make the process a lot easier for them, including I guess that recommendation about scholarships or grants. Another question I was going to ask, I noticed I was looking on the site, we've been talking about like the laws, this might be a little different, but the laws, maybe there's been some recent changes. I know we've had in the past, we kind of share what some of the recent changes are. So I was just going to see if maybe we can continue that, or maybe I'm not finding it, but that would be helpful. And I think also maybe if, maybe this is on our website since it's like a central, you were mentioning earlier about the child welfare, like if there's changes in the laws, maybe we might be able to have just a little tab where if we're able to kind of keep up with all that, just so if someone's just wondering what might have changed recently. So anyway, but no, I think this whole, what is it? I'm sorry. This review of all this data, I think it's really informative, and I'm excited to see what we can do with it.
Yeah. And with talking about the changes to the laws and stuff, it's one of those things where we do put out, Roseanne and Christy, you guys both work on, there's a yearly report that we put out at the beginning of the year that explains all the, all the changes to the laws. What we are looking at is really, I think we do put out good information. It's making it more accessible. And so we are currently, Marlon is working on looking at the website to make sure that, what's a better way to present that so people have that information. They don't have to find it. So we're looking at that too, to make sure that that is, and then also possibly collaborating with schools and such, more collaborations with schools to help us get this information out.
I want to say one more thing, one last thing in support of supervisors. I know that some organizations or associations will have like almost like a virtual get together on supporting each other. So I would encourage some of the agencies, if they can continue to do that, or if there's something that we can do as, the BDS to help link people, or I think maybe that might be helpful for the supervisors so that they can provide that information for the people they're providing.
No, I think that's an important thing for us too, is being able to leverage that contacts out there, because we can only say so much through the web or through Facebook and such. It's really leveraging that. We do have some great associations that do help us with getting the word out, but looking for more opportunities to leverage that, communication with schools, with different other maybe associations that we haven't had that much contact with. I think that's what we're looking at.
Okay. Seeing no further committee member comments, we'll go to comments from the public. Are there any comments in the room there, Steve?
Yes, there are.
Ben Caldwell, MFT. Thank you, Steve, for putting this together. Just wondered if it was possible for the board to publish the actual data set so that people could look into how responses on different questions might interact with one another.
I knew you were going to ask that question. And I was looking for a way. Let me look into it, because it's working with SurveyMonkey and pulling it, and I did have a data set. Not sure how to actually publish it to make it look where it's actually, digestible from everybody else. But I will continue to look at that just to see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again, Shanti Ezrin with CAMPS. Really just wanted to thank Steve, thank the entire staff for conducting the survey and sharing the results of the survey and going through some of the high level, overview takeaways and everything today. And of course, always really appreciate the current efforts that are happening to improve the licensure pathway process for all of the parties involved. It's all really fantastic, and looking forward to hearing more about it in detail, of course, in the October meeting. We'll share that. CAMPT will take a look at the survey results, and we'll share this with our internal team and absolutely bring back any questions and further feedback if we have any. Thank you.
looks like that's it for the comments in the room.
Okay, moderator, do we have any online comments?
We are open for public comment online. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. And it looks like our first request comes from Lisa Winninger. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi again. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa Wenninger, LPCC. I really appreciate the work that that the board is doing with getting actual feedback from licensees on this. And perhaps in an attempt to support Ms. Walker's comment that maybe there's some easy options to implement quickly, I have a couple ideas that are pretty far down into the weeds, and I'll try to go through them quickly. And I realize there are limitations that I don't know about on many of these. But one is the inequity around MFT trainees being able to count practicum hours where the other licensees cannot. One option that I've seen in, and I wish that could change, but as an alternative, I believe Oregon allows counseling licensees who went through a CACREP program. CACREP is the accreditation board for counseling programs, to get a 500-hour credit towards their whole hours requirement. So I don't know how they've implemented that, but that's one option that maybe could be considered. Another idea is around the requirement in California that it's 104 supervised weeks, which ends up meaning that it's impossible for a trainee to go through, specifically an associate who's going for the counseling license, to complete in 2 years because they need to take a vacation or self-care time. And that also means that they have to do their associate's renewal and at least one extra time if they're trying to go through as quickly as possible because of the delays with the board reviews. And so that means there's an additional fee of renewing an associate while you're in that waiting period to get approval for the exam or your final license. And I'm wondering if maybe some of those fees could be credited back or applied somehow. There's a few other ideas I have, but I'm running out of
15
time. I'm just
seconds.
really grateful for the openness to these changes.
And I would you definitely can email me with the additional comments on that if you would like. That would be great. Yeah, actually, you know what? Can we offer a couple more minutes on that?
Sure.
Absolutely. Hold on just a moment. Would you put your hand back up, please? Thank you.
So I got through, it was a whirlwind, but I got through the ones that are on my list. To answer questions.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Oh, you can go ahead.
So I got through my little rapid fire suggestions there. If there's questions or they weren't clear, the recommendations I was making, I'm happy to review again.
I think they were clear.
Yeah.
For offering
Did
additional
you
time.
have one more or two more?
You had mentioned you had additional ones, so we wanted to give you some extra time if you wanted to go over those.
Oh, appreciate that. So the other one is much bigger, and it's the requirement that associates are a W-2 employee for the supervisor. There's all kinds of opportunity for exploitation, and that's probably higher of the associate, and it's probably higher if it's a 1099. However, when we talk about how hard it can be for the associates to find supervision, that's a big limitation because a lot of qualified supervisors who would be good clinical supervisors aren't set up to bring an employee into their practice. It adds to their expenses, and they get a little bit freaked out by the complexity of running that kind of a business. There's other issues, of course. I think there technically we would be W-2s under the tax law. Like it doesn't make sense to be a 1099 based on the level of supervision that's needed. However, when we look at the comparison, I looked at the data comparing the answers from licensed clinicians compared to the ones who seem to be pre-licensed. There is a real shift in the market and just the economy based on the answers for things like, did you do online supervision or not? And a lot of the supervisors who might be very, very skilled have been practicing for 30 years, and they do not know the clinical licensing process today at all. And I don't know that we're helping that with the W-2 versus 1099 question, but there needs to be more support on the employment part in supporting supervisors and understanding what it means to bring on a practitioner, a supervisee.
Okay.
I hope that made sense as well, but
Yeah,
that's a
no,
big
it did.
sticking point in availability for supervision.
Okay. No, that made sense. Thank you. Thanks. And I'm also available by email too, if you ever need to email more suggestions. Thank you.
And that appears to be our last request for public comment.
Great. Thank you. Any other board member or staff comments on this one?
I think that's it. What I garnered from that, what we'll look at is bringing back some, a kind of a memo to describe what we're currently doing, some of the short-term things that we could possibly tackle, some of the long-term goals, and discuss that later on in October. Let's keep continuing the conversation.
Great, thank you. Okay, so that moves us on to item 8, suggestions for future agenda items. Do we have any committee members with future agenda items to suggest? Okay, seeing none. Do we have any members of the public who have agenda items to suggest? We'll start in the room with you, Steve.
Yes, we have some.
Thank you so much. First time in person here, so appreciate that. Hello, my name is Elise Springer. I'm a licensed MFT board member for the California chapter of Postpartum Support International regarding child abuse assessment and reporting coursework requirements pre-licensure. There's more than 400,000 births in California each single year, which means every single year, approximately 800,000 California residents become parents. According to the California Legislative Analysis Office, in 23-24, the overall child welfare system is seeing 100,000 families every month. Families with neglect is the primary allegation. And as a parental risk factor for neglect, the LAO cites 41% substance use and 18% undefined mental illness as parental risks. Substance abuse and overdose is a leading cause of death for new moms in the perinatal period. Perinatal mood and anxiety disorders like postpartum depression can make it difficult for new parents to care for themselves and their babies and can lead to neglect, again cited by the LAO as a primary parental risk factor. Postpartum depression may interfere with a parent's ability to provide consistent, affectionate, and stimulating contact with their infant, and they may be unable to respond to their children's needs at all. Substance abuse and overdose is a leading cause of death for new moms in the perinatal period. Just wanted to say that twice. There's also a known disproportionate impact of perinatal mental health on parents of color, particularly due to issues of implicit bias, systemic inequity, and access issues. Many parents, including our BIPOC consumers, are fearful of disclosing perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, with 75% never receiving the help they need out of worry of engagement in the
15 seconds.
DCFS system. Master level clinicians overseen by the Board of Behavioral Sciences have no training currently in perinatal mental health. Perinatal mental health education should be a component of the child abuse assessment and reporting coursework requirements for all clinical licenses. Please consider adding this as a topic on future agendas and future meetings.
Thank you. And that looks like that's it for here.
Okay, moderator, do we have any folks wanting to comment online?
We're going to call it out. Now is the time to raise your hand. Please do so by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen if you wish to make a comment on future agenda items. Dial in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing none, I think we're good to continue.
Okay, great. On to item 9, public comment for items not on the agenda. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during the public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Do we have any committee members that have comments for items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Do we have any folks in the room that have comments for items not on the agenda?
Not seeing any, no.
Okay. And moderator, do we have any folks online with comments for items not on the agenda? Moderator, did we lose you?
It might help if I unmuted myself. I apologize. Now is the time to raise a hand for comments not on the agenda. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing none, I think we're good to continue.
Great, thank you. That brings us to item 10, to the adjournment. Thank you everyone for participating today. As a reminder, our next full board meeting will be September 19th and 20th in Sacramento. Hope to see you then. Thank you so much. Have a great day.